Our guest speaker today is connected with us but through something that has happened and been going on in Jeremy Brock's life. So let's hear what he has to say, and then we'll open up to Chuck this morning.
Thanks. So you guys, if you've been here for the last few months, you've probably heard me bring up this guy's name before. I brought him up a few weeks ago, and here he is right here, Chuck Keels. He's coming to join me on the stage. No, that's actually his companion, Jax, and it was written in his contract that we had to let his dog come with him, so we did. But no, this guy, I told the story a few weeks ago, a few days after I found out that I had cancer, and I was absolutely rocked to my core. We're sitting on the beach. It was Labor Day weekend back at the beginning of September, and this guy comes rolling up, smiling on a bike with his dog in the back, and I think nothing of it because I was just in my own little world. And then Jeremy calls me over, and I get to hear this guy tell us incredible story of what God did. And I look him up on Facebook, and we become friends. We start communicating through that. So we've been developing a friendship through my journey. He's been encouraging me. He's been yelling at me to stop being a whiny baby and to be positive instead of fearful and negative. And it's been a much-needed help in my life. And I'm not exactly sure what he's going to talk about today, but I can tell you that this guy is a living, breathing example of what God can do when you trust him. And he has such an infectious energy and love of Jesus and just wanting people to know the hope that they can have for their life. So without further ado, I introduce you to my friend, Chuck Keels.
And Jax. So first, this is the first time, so bear with me. And I don't know what he's going to do, but he's used to me running my big mouth and hanging out with me. So sit down. You're going to stay here with me, or are you going to go down there? All right. So first of all, I want to say thanks for inviting me out. I actually live in Phoenix and met these guys on the beach. And basically, what's happened in my life the last few years is when I started opening my mind and I started seeing what was going on, it is so unbelievable what God puts in your path if you open up and identify it and then take it in. And just like meeting these guys, my life's been a whirlwind. And just like Crystal talked about, when you talk about changes, God's always given us a little nudge. He's always given us a little nudge. When you're at your job, or when you're in a relationship, or when you're somewhere in life and it just doesn't feel uncomfortable, I really don't like this, that's God giving you a little nudge saying it's time to move to a different place. And these are some of the things that I started learning through a crazy story that I'm going to tell you. And I want to start out with just who I am, because it's kind of funny. I'm basically an old farm boy from Ohio. I grew up farming. I picked sweet corn. I baled hay. I moved from a small town to Columbus, Ohio, and lived there for about 10 years. I got a chance to come out to visit some people in Phoenix and fell in love with it, and thought about the gray skies and the cold in Ohio and said, what am I doing going back there? So I was able to move out here almost 24 years ago to Phoenix, fell in love with it. And a lot of the reasons are just because you can be outside all year round, or you can go to, don't even start. You can go to Mexico, you can go to California, you can go in the mountains hiking, and that stuff's all me. So I want to tell you what happened to me a little over 3 years ago. Was I basically was working in Phoenix, landscaping, designing landscaping, and I started getting kind of sick. And when I say that is, a couple aspirin would take away the headache. You know, it got me through the day, and so something was going on, but I didn't know what was going on. And so basically, what happened was the last 2 weeks of this something going on went from I can handle this to, oh my gosh, what is going on with my body? And so basically what happened was I actually took my boys downtown Gilbert, Arizona, where we live, to the food trucks. Got to go to get my tacos on Friday night, right? Get my food truck. We went home, popped in a movie, and as we were watching this movie, I could not get comfortable sitting on the couch, laying on the floor, nothing. My back was killing me. My head was pounding. And so when the boys went to bed, I said, I'm going to the hospital. I got to get this figured out because, like I said, it went from bad to worse. So I stumble into Gilbert Hospital, and they said, well, we need to do some scans. So they start running scans. And they come back at midnight, and I'm sitting in the emergency room by myself, and they said, you've got 2 fractured vertebrae in your back. I'm like, are you kidding me? First of all, how did it happen? I don't remember falling or anything. And the other thing is, who walks around with a broken back, right? I'm thinking, this is insane. So basically, they said, well, it's kind of common, so we can't say what the problem is until we get the rest of your scans. So basically, at 5 a.m, the emergency room doctor comes in, shuts the door, sits down with me, and she says, "It's what I thought it was. I got bad news. It's cancer." And I'm sitting there. I just turned 50. I'm sitting there, and your head starts spinning. This like, what do you mean? What type of cancer? How bad is the cancer? All these questions are going through your mind, right? And so they said, well, we're bringing in cancer doctors from a cancer clinic to do the testing and find out more about it. So the doctors came in from the cancer clinic and started drilling into the bones and into the lymph nodes and doing all the deep testing to find out what's going on. I went home. Don't start. I went home. My girlfriend was working here, and this is one of the reasons why we do a lot of running back and forth to Orange County, because just love being at the beach. But I'd call her and tell her I'm at the hospital, and they're saying the C word, and she's like, "What?" She jumps on a plane and flies in. So basically, we're at home for 3 days, and then the phone rings. And basically, they said, you're going to come over to the cancer clinic, and we're going to tell you what happened with this testing and stuff. So we go into a room. The doctor comes in. He sits down. He looks at me in the face and he says, "Chuck, there's no way to candy coat this. I got to tell you, this is crazy." He says, "The cancer's so bad, we don't even know where it originated. We don't know what kind of cancer it is. Your body's so saturated with cancer, we don't even know where it started at." They said, "It's all over your body. It's in your bones, your long bones, which are your arms and your legs, your pelvis, your spine, your ribs, and a little bit in the back of your brain is cancer." They said, "You're stage 4, and you got somewhere about 3 months to live." So we go home, and we knew it was cancer already, but we didn't have any idea we was going to get that kind of news. And so basically what happens is we start talking, and I had to tell my 2 boys that came in from school, one rides the bus, one comes in with his friends, separately, "Your dad is very, very sick, and the doctor said I got about 3 months to live." And it was absolutely, it was emotional. It was head spinning. Everything you can imagine to deal with something like this that so many people in this world are going through, being diagnosed with some type of cancer, was what we were going through, and maybe 1,000 times worse. At least I thought it was anyway. So basically what happened was they said, "Okay, what do you do if you got 3 months to live?" "I'm going back to Ohio. I'm going back to hang out with my mom and dad and people I love." So basically, that was the plan. So I actually started giving away my personal stuff. God put some interesting lessons through my journey. So basically, I said, I'm not trucking all my stuff across the country if I got 3 months to live, right? So I start telling my friends, come and get what you want. And this is the stuff that you work your tail off every day, that job, that push. I was in sales, designing landscaping, to get this leather furniture and that flat screen TV and all this stuff. And guess what? When your health is in jeopardy, does that stuff even matter? Does it mean anything at all? I gave away everything I owned. My friends were like, "What?" I go, "If you don't come and get it, it's going to be on the curb at the end of the day, and everybody's going to sort through it." And my friends were showing up with trucks and U-Hauls and hauling away my stuff and giving me hugs, and we were crying. And so basically, I got the tickets for me and my boys to go back to Ohio. Deb was going to come back to California to save her job because this is going on 2 weeks now. She's out of work. She said, I got to go back to California to save my job. So this was up to a Saturday. We gave away the stuff. On Sunday, the flight was to leave out. So I said, Deb, let's go stay at a resort and just have dinner together. So we stayed at the Hilton in Phoenix and basically just had dinner and talked. And the first thing she says is, I probably will never see you again. You're going this way, I'm going that way. I said, yeah, but my sister's a doctor back in Ohio, and she's got people lined up. They're going to do more testing. I'm trying to stay as positive as possible with this crazy news. And she's probably right. So what happens is the next morning, I get up to go down the hall to the bathroom. I heard a pop, and I hit the floor. And I was a pretty tough old farm boy. I was, my whole life, I can go at it pretty good. And I hit the floor with a, ugh! And she called 911. She's screaming. I grabbed the door handle and pulled myself up and the top of the door, and I'm standing there, and the pain is shooting up my back and through my head like nothing you have ever imagined in your life. And any little movement, that pain was going through my head. Deb calls 911. She comes down the hall. She's standing behind me, holding me like this. And we're just flipping out. And pretty soon, here comes the fire department. They come into the room. She said, he has cancer and something popped in his back. So it takes 8 guys to get me down off of this door. They get the board out there. They get me on that. They get me all wrapped up. Every little budge, the pain was shooting up my back. And they get me down the steps into the ambulance. It's in a little mountainy area, real pretty over there. Every little bump driving out of there, I felt. Every single bump. The pain was shooting through my head. They get me to the closest hospital, which was called John C. Lincoln Hospital. It's in an older part of Phoenix. And basically, they get me in, and they have to slide me from that thing over to the bed I'm going to be on. So they put a slick board and a cloth, and they're sliding, and I'm still feeling it. And the emergency room doctor that's on this kid that's on duty at the time, she comes in. Deb has some of my scans from the other hospital in her bag. She gives them to them. They come back that day and they go, you're not going to Ohio today. They said, you just suffered what they call a compression fracture. I just completely broke my back. So a disc in my back was getting saturated with the cancers in a process they call metastasis. And it just said, I can't hold you up anymore. Hit the floor. So they said, we're doing some more testing. We do our own testing at our hospital, so we want to do some more testing. They came back and they said, it's prostate cancer. First time I ever heard that. It started in your prostate, but you let it go for, who knows, a year, 2 years, and cancer goes to where it's fed. It got into my lymph nodes, and it got into my bone marrow, and it ran wild all over my body. That's why it was kind of gradually getting a little bit sicker, a little headache, aspirin, things like that. And then, boom, at the end. They said, it's bad, but we have a plan. And I go, well, tell me about that, because at the other hospital, when I was diagnosed and went home, I got a knock on the door, and it's 2 nurses from hospice. Hospice nurses are end-of-the-life nurses, show up at my house. And I've got 2 hospice nurses not only at my house writing prescriptions for liquid morphine and a hospital bed so I didn't have to climb up the stairs. They're crying. That's how bad this was. They're crying. I mean, it was just unbelievable, just what was happening, thing after thing. So basically, they said, we have a plan. And I get a little excited, and I said, okay, tell me about the plan. And they said, tomorrow, we're going to do 2 surgeries. We're going to go in and put in a port. A port's a deal that it goes under your skin in your chest, and it's a tube that goes into your artery. And the reason why they love a port, well, they have to use a port, is because the type of chemo they're going to use, the chemicals are so strong that if they put it through an IV, it'll burn the veins. So they've got to do it through this port. The nurses in the hospitals love when you have a port, because even to draw your blood, they just pop a needle in this port and draw your blood, because it's already tied into your system. So tomorrow we're going to put in a port, and we're going to actually stop your testosterone production, because it's feeding the cancer. It's inflaming the cancer. What are you going to say? Oh, I don't, if I make it through this, I want to have hair on my chest, come on, let's go, get on with the plan. And then they said the next day, we're actually going to start chemo. And chemo's got to get in there and start killing this cancer running all over in your body. And I was excited because there's a plan. So I went into 2 surgeries at John C. Lincoln Hospital. And I know the nurses by name, and I know the room. I can walk in there right now. The prep room, then they took me into the surgery room. I remember everything until they put that injection into the IV that knocks you out, and boom, I'm out. The next time I wake up, I'm in the recovery room, okay? It's a long room. The surgery room goes that way, but the recovery room, and they're pulling curtains open and shut and getting people ready for their surgeries and stuff. And the doctors come in, and of course, they're checking on you, and they let you know, hey, everything went perfect. Everything went perfect in your surgeries. Just hang in there, and you're going to go upstairs. Your kids, and your girlfriend are waiting for you. And so I'm watching them, getting people ready. They come over and would talk to me a little bit, and I'm laying flat on my back on a gurney. All right, and I start to get a chill. And at first I thought was somebody opened a door at the end of the room, and a breeze is coming through. And I look back, and I double take, and there's somebody in the room standing here watching me, and I look back, and Jesus is standing right here. Dark brown robe, white scarf. I see his beard, and he just leans in, and he touches me on the shoulder, and he's gone. And I'm flipping out. I'm like, what was that? Right away, I knew I was in the presence of Jesus. I just felt it. And the first thought was, I'm pretty sick. I'd started losing tons of weight. I was pale. If you ever see anybody going through, serious cancer, I looked like that person getting towards the end of life. That's what I looked like. I was pretty sick, and I'm thinking, did he come in here to take me with him? Did he come to get me? Well, what I didn't know was he came to save me. And so basically what happened was the next day, the nurses come into the room in the morning, time for your drugs. Here's your steroids for shrinking the tumors in your chest cavity. Here's your bone strengtheners for all this metastasis in your bones. But your pain meds are as needed. So you got to tell us of what level pain. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, how bad's your pain today? I've got this big back brace on. It's like they call it a turtle shell, and you Velcro it on. And I got strict orders, and you can't sit up without it because of my spinal collapse. But my cancer doctor said, don't you dare move without that thing. And I'm Velcroing this thing on, and I sit up, and I look at him, and I go, I'm not feeling any pain. They're like, you just had 2 surgeries. You just had a spinal collapse. You should be in agonizing pain. What do you mean? Okay, here's the nurse button. As soon as you start feeling the pain, call us, because we'll get in here and we'll get you on something. We don't want it to get too far ahead of you. From that day to this second right now talking to you guys, I never touched another pain med. I had mounds of pain meds on the counter at my house. I put them in 2 grocery bags and took them to a fire department to dispose of them because I was like, this is insane. The pain stopped, okay? 10 days at John C. Lincoln Hospital, okay? Got tired. Where you going, bud? Checking out? 10 days at John C. Lincoln Hospital. They moved me over to Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona. Okay, so I got to tell you a little bit about the Mayo Clinic. First of all, I'm around a lot of people in a cancer area, them and their families going through cancer. So I met some absolutely beautiful people, okay? I was at the Mayo Clinic for 5 weeks because with this back brace and stuff, I could not even tie my own shoes, take a shower, had caretakers, family coming in and out of town, all that stuff that goes on with somebody that's dying of cancer. So what happens is at Mayo Clinic, there was times that the chemo absolutely kicked my butt. I went to get out of bed and I laid back down and slept for 4 or 5 hours. It was that bad. But on the days I did have a little bit of juice, I had a little bit of energy, I would sit up, I'd put my back brace on, sit up, slip into my shoes, and walk out. Okay, so when you get home, just Google the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's all desert around there, okay? So I would slip into my shoes, go out the door, and it was desert. I couldn't go very far. I mean, my body had been through so much trauma. I'd lost 40 pounds up to this point, 40 pounds. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to start just moving a little bit and getting my body going again, right? And what really I was doing was I'd walk in the desert and I go, God, what is your plan for me? Look at this. I have been completely taken out of society. I don't have my kids, my job, my health. All right, see you, bud. Go back there with Jeremy. I have nothing. I've been completely taken out of society. What is your plan for me? And just like us talking here this morning, God starts talking back to me just as clear as a bell. Chuck, you've wasted so much time in your life. And so now we want to start giving you things back little by little. And I want you to focus on what you're truly passionate about. And I was like, how cool is that? Who gets caught up in life and can't focus what they're passionate about? Who gets caught up in life with kids and jobs and relationships and they don't focus on what they're passionate about? And God needed to pull me back and get my attention, which he did. And started this path. So I had 5 weeks on the days that I could of walking into the desert, having a conversation with God. And it was unbelievable, the lessons that he taught me, okay? Probably stuff that I knew, but you just don't put this stuff into gear. So anyway, what happens is 5 weeks at Mayo Clinic, I'd moved out of my rental house. So basically, come here. So what's going to happen at the end of this 5 weeks at Mayo Clinic, I moved out of my rental house and gave away everything I owned. Remember that? So all of a sudden, I'm in a scramble, and we found an apartment. I wanted to keep my boys near their school. And so I found an apartment, and I moved in. And I was keeping in contact with the church in Phoenix because they were asking me about, what was going on. And they even came to visit me. And basically, I moved into this apartment, and my Facebook friends went berserk. They started showing up with silverware, towels, furniture. I mean, it was like, I'm the dude with the truck my whole life. I'm the guy that everybody called. And now I'm sitting here and I've got to receive. I'm blown away. I mean, you talking about a humbling lesson, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. They started showing up so much that there's a young lady named Shelly at my church. She called, she goes, Chuck, you moved into this apartment a week ago and I told you to call us because the church wants to help you out. And I go, Shelly, my friends have lost their minds. I've got so much stuff over here that I'm taking stuff over to Goodwill. I mean, it was that crazy. Okay, so I went from my house, my stuff to nothing. Did it matter? Didn't matter. Back to a place and people just pouring out, just helping me and my boys get through this time of our life. So basically, what happened is, of course, a lot of prayer, a lot of morning walks, a lot of day walks. But I would get in the swimming pool at the apartment complex because it took the weight off of my back and I could move a little bit and stretch a little bit. And so I would do that. And after all these things that I would do, I would tell God, hey, thanks. He just said, push yourself. This is what you've done your whole life. Your whole life's been a battle, making things happen. You go at it. So every time I did something, I would thank God. But also on the days that weren't so good, the chemo days, the bad days, conversations and stuff with people, it was so heavy that at the end of those days, when you normally go, what a crappy day, I said, God, thank you. Look at the lessons I learned today. I started going through these changes that old Chuck would have never thought of these things. And so basically, remember, I'm still going through chemo. So 6 months of chemo was the plan. I'm going into chemo, and every time I went in, my doctor would show me my blood tests and say, oh my gosh, this is 0.002 better. It's improving. Keep doing what you're doing. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So basically, by this time, I'm not only in the pool, but I'm starting to even swim a couple laps. I'm starting to go back to the gym, and I couldn't hardly lift anything because I melted down, but I could put one pen in, and it wasn't the fact that I was in there working out. It was the fact that I was there. I was in there. I was pulled into the parking lot so many times, and I said, why are you going in there? Why are you doing this? And I said, mind over matter. God was right behind me. Get in there. Do your thing. This is what makes you live. This is what makes you live. Could you possibly go through cancer or any disease in life, mental stuff? Could you go through these things and it be a blessing? I'm starting to learn these things and it's blowing my mind, right? And I open my mind to, the prayers I'm sending out, being patient and waiting for the answers coming back, because God's timing and my timing weren't the same. God's timing and anybody's timing is not the same. So being patient, hey, you asked for the prayer, you told friends to pray for you. Everybody around the country was already praying for me because of this situation. So 6 months of chemo, okay? I started that, the first chemo session was at John C. Lincoln Hospital, a couple more when I was at the Mayo Clinic, and it continued. And so basically, like I said, the blood tests were getting a little bit better each time. And what happened was, I go in about 3 months into this, they take your blood test, you go down the hall, you're sitting in this big cushy chair and you got lots of snacks, and they plug you the chemo into you and you watch this bag of poison dripping into your body. And let me tell you how weird that is. The first time that I seen a nurse come in with this bag of chemo that's going to go to my body, with a full gear on, a mask, and lead-protected gloves for something that's going to drip into my body, I'm like blown away. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is going inside of me? So basically, I go in and I get my chemo. This is 3 months in. I get the chemo treatment. I go down the hall, and that blood test that they took when I first walk in there, it goes to their lab, and then it comes back. And then the doctor, my cancer doctor, can sit there and read this to me. And I walk in, and she's got this huge smile on her face. And I'm like, all right, what's going on? I said, hi, good morning, Dr. Ahmad. And she says, Chuck, I could not wait to see you. She said, I sent your blood test back to the lab twice. She said, I thought there was a mistake. Your blood test is almost like a normal, healthy guy. To see these miracles, experience these miracles, it blew my mind. Because when I started through this cancer, and I started thinking about old stories in the Bible, you know what I'm talking about as far as guys gone into furnaces, gone in with lions? I couldn't have done that. I'm like, who would do that? Who has that kind of faith? It just did. I just started going through this change that God put me through. And basically what happened was, she said, your blood test is almost like a normal, healthy guy. I'm calling people. I'm on Facebook. I'm telling everybody. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. I finished the 6 months of chemo. I didn't even want to go. I was going to the gym. I was going for little walks. I was doing what I could do. But you don't tell a cancer doctor that, you're going to just stop going to chemo. It was a 6-month program, and that's what I was on. So I went, and I remember pulling in the parking lot the last 3 times and crying like a baby. Just crying like a baby. I just sat there going, it's a cancer clinic. I'm getting better. I don't want to go in there. And I'd sit there and I'd cry and I'd say a prayer and I'd get out in my car and I'd go in and I'd get my drip and it would kick my butt for the next 2 weeks. And I finished the six months, okay? So the story's already insane. It's happening to me. It's already insane. I can't believe what I'm going through, and I definitely can't believe how it's progressing is my favorite part. Because what happened at the end of the 6 months of chemo, of course, all the blood tests and stuff come back right away, and they said, we can't find any cancer in your body, okay? So, it's an absolute miracle. But let me tell you what happened. I'm in a discussion with my doctor. I'm a little bit of a smart mouth sometimes, so I'm kind of razzing her. And I said, hey, I'm oiling up the chain of my mountain bike. I'm back out. And she goes, you're not going to be mountain biking probably ever again in your life because you have metastasized bone in your body that's damaged bone. And this damaged bone, it doesn't heal very fast and sometimes not at all. She even said, I have a patient who had metastasis like you in his spine, bent over to pick up a bag of groceries, and suffered 3 fractures right in a row, and ended up in a nursing home and couldn't take care of his family anymore. She said, I'm so worried about you and this crazy stuff that you're saying. Mountain biking. I said, I do mud runs with my boys. They're like, no. When you go out that front door, you wrap yourself in bubble wrap for the rest of your life because you got to be so careful. So what happens is, she says, we're sending you down to Tempe, Arizona, to meet with the bone cancer specialist that you've met with one other time, did some scans, to find out what the density level is. The density level is going to tell us what you can and what you can't do. So I go down there, and I go into the medical clinic and meet with my doctor and her assistant. They send me down for the scans, and I come back in, and they're sitting there with this computer screen, and they're flipping through the pages. And then they're looking back at me, and then they're talking. And I'm like, okay, what's going on over here? And pretty soon they turn around, and the doctor goes, Chuck, can you see the screen? And I said, yeah, I can see it, but I'm not a doctor. It looks like a skeleton, right? And they go, we're going to zoom in on some of the bone structure. And they start zooming in on the bones in my legs, the bones in my arms, the bones in my spine. And she looks at me in the face, and she goes, if I didn't know you and I didn't see these previous scans, I would think you're lying. Your bones are completely clean, healed. So, the first thing I thought of when I walked to the car was, Lazarus, come out and walk. Get up and walk. I was the dead guy. I was dying. And I just, the life in me, was absolutely unbelievable, phenomenal. And as I've continued this journey, a couple things have happened. One is I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of cancer people. If you're a doctor, if you go to med school, you may say, I want to work with cancer patients. Who else in this world wants to work with cancer patients? It's a crazy world. It's a really tough place to be. And God took this old farm boy from Ohio and said, this is where I need you. This is where I need you. And I started listening. So one of the first things that happened was after I was, it's not remission because prostate cancer can come back, and no doctor wants that on their name, so they just say you're cancer-free. So basically what happened was after this conversation, I went home, and I started thinking, and on my morning walk with Jackson and talking to God, I said, what do I do with this crazy story? This is insane. And at first, the story was an old Ohio farm boy recovers from stage 4 cancer. Pretty cool, right? Not even close. Not even close. So first of all, I said, okay, should I go to churches? Should I go to hospitals? Should I go to prisons and tell this story? And God says, one person at a time. You're going to start changing the world one person at a time. I didn't know why, but I said, okay. And I enjoyed it because I could be out walking at the park. I could be at the grocery store and tell someone, you want to hear a cool story? And tell them my story. And my little crazy Facebook went from 400 people to like 4,000 people because people wanted to be a part of this. They were telling their friends that had cancer. They were telling their friends that had problems in their life. You got to hear this story. And this thing started growing. And then I started seeing God's plan for me. God's plan for me. Basically, when I first started telling the story, God knows we're human. It's an education. It's a process. It's baby steps. It's looking over the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You can start something so tiny and some small, making these small changes in your life, and look back in 3 years and go, look at this. This was the plan? But the thing was, I started back then saying, God, you saved my life. So whatever you say, I'm going to do. And as I started doing that, the balance and the peace in my mind and in my life became absolutely phenomenal. And I was mad at myself. Why didn't I do this as a young man and feel this way? And feel this way? And the jobs that I chased and the sales stuff I did to drive a certain car, to live in a certain house, and still have all these problems around us, the money didn't solve the problems. It didn't solve the problems. And this answered my question to what could solve what solved the problems is just putting your faith totally in Jesus. Putting your faith in God. And I'll tell you a little quick story about me and Jax. After the cancer, I got to pay for my house payment. I got to do these things. I said, I'm going to go work for a company. I can't spend 70, 80 hours a week sitting at the computer designing somebody's landscaping. I didn't have the energy. My brain was pickled from 6 months of chemo. So I took a job with a company, and I was teaching their employees I was a landscaper, so everything to do with landscaping and install and plants, and I was teaching them all these things. And once we started selling the deals, the deal was with the company I was going to start making commission. I worked for them for a little over 4 months, and the week before I started getting my commission checks, they fired me. I'm the next morning, get my cup of coffee, take Jax, we go down the canal where we walk, and I start having a serious conversation with God. I said, I just went through cancer. I just went through cancer and almost died. Now I'm going to come back and say, I'm going to put my energy into a company, and they just completely abused me for my knowledge and then let me go. And I go, God, what gives? What gives? And I hear this voice within seconds. You're already rich. And I said, I got kids and I got a house and I got things that I got to pay for. And God says, you're already rich. And I said, I don't know how this works because I've been a sales guy and on the hustle, all my life. I've got to make things happen, do these things. So as calls started coming in for work, I started turning them down. I had to test myself. I had to say, if God says this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do. So I completely, put my life in God's hands. And I was actually offered a couple speaking positions in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from Ohio. One group actually called and said, hey, we want you to come in. And the second group heard I was coming in. So I got to go tell my cancer story on a Friday night and a Saturday night in Columbus. And then basically the rest of the week was getting to hang out with my mom and dad and my family. And I was sitting in the garage. My dad, that's his shop. So we had the chairs in the garage. We're out there catching up on everything. And the phone rings. And so what happens is I basically take the phone call. And it's a company in Phoenix that I interviewed with like 6 months ago. And they said, we didn't have a position available right then, but right now we need an account manager. The people here really liked you, and your application is really good. We want to hire you. I was actually on my knees in tears, and let me tell you why. It didn't have nothing to do with sales. It didn't have anything to do with sales. God started providing for me in a way that I could never even imagine. So I went from 70, 80 hours sitting at my computer designing landscaping, meeting with clients, all this time, to a 40-hour-a-week job. It's like a vacation, right? I'm like, this is amazing. And I go, God, I get off at 2:30 every day, and I got the rest of the day. I have all weekend off. I have paid vacations. Is this cool or what? I go, God, what am I going to do with all this time? And God goes, we got work to do. We got a plan. We got a plan. So basically, when I'm out, I went from, Chuck, the farm boy from Ohio, to this guy that God stepped in and gave me, wanted my attention, and then started teaching me lessons. And the only thing I really did was just be open. I'm just an old farm boy from Ohio, and it goes to tell us, who does God pick to put in different situations? How did I meet these guys on the beach a year ago? Okay, right? And how did all of us end up here today? You start thinking about these things and you realize it was a plan. This was a plan. There was no doubt in my mind, and I thank God at the end of the day because I'm a part of watching this stuff roll out. So, basically, like I said, the story's been crazy. Everybody was getting on me to write a book. I'm not a writer. So I had a friend come in from Florida and sat down with me and said, when are you going to start writing? This story is so powerful, and there's people out there that need it. And I said, I have no idea what to do. And me and him started working together. He said, God told me to come and help you start your book. Started the book, finished it, took 8 months. So emotional. All the things as humans we put walls and block off because they hurt us. I had to bring back out and sit there and write about them. You know, a lady walking in with my chemo bag with lead gloves on. I mean, it was insane. So I finished the book, and God kept telling me to finish the book. Finish the book, finish the book. And basically, the reason why was because he said, we don't know if we'll ever sell any. I'm going to just give them all away. But the places that it's going to get you into and the people that it's going to touch is why you needed to do this. So all this stuff is kind of baby steps right now. I'm doing a lot of work with the American Cancer Society back home because I needed to give back to them. And I'm around people that are going through cancer, that are survivors, and I know my story has a lot of power in it, And God gave me this amazing gift, and He says, now it's time for you to give back, and so that's what I do. So, super nice. I'm totally blessed and appreciate you guys invite me to come out and join you from Phoenix, and I'll have Jeremy come up, and we're going to say some prayers. And it's my new brother right here.
I love when I talked to Chuck this week about him coming out here. I loved, he has this powerful story. We all have a powerful story, though, if we think about it. We went through a series of people telling their stories. And we all have powerful stories, but the reality is, he told me this, and I loved it from the moment we talked. He said, it's not about my story. It's about the greater story of what God's doing in my life and what He's doing with. The story is what gripped me for my purpose and what God's calling me into. And it really resonated with me because I used to talk with my friend Kittrick a lot about, I grew up just putting one foot after the other, day after day, same old, and about 2006, God had a different plan for my life, and I went on this roller coaster journey to Arkansas and back, and planting a church, and God, you guys don't realize how far these ideas were out of my mind. When I was, Justin knows, when I was back in 2002, 2003, I was going to have a large financial services business. I was going to work very few hours a week, make a bunch of money, and that was going to be my life right here in Huntington Beach. That was my life. Done. Stamp it, sealed, approved. That's it. That was the journey I thought I was on. And the reality is that I had a lot different journey than that, and God gripped my life early on. And that's why this church is here, because I believe each and every one of us, like Chuck, and like Melissa, and like Gary, I believe we all have something to accomplish. There's something that we can do. There's something unique about our story that God can grip our lives and use us for something greater. That's why He's bringing us together. So like he said, it's not a coincidence that we're here. It's not a coincidence that we met him on the beach at one of our serves. I love doing our serves because we meet so many interesting people out there, and people start coming to our church from it, and we're able to just bless people and show them the love of God. The Bible tells us it says that it's the kindness of God that leads men to repentance. It's the kindness of God that leads men to repentance. What does that mean? It means that when we do kind things in God's name, it begins to change their thinking, to turn their life around and say, you know what? Maybe that story is gripping me too, so I can then, what we've been talking about, follow Jesus. And I can follow Jesus, not in the way that I thought I was going to follow Him, but in the way that He had for me. So Chuck, thank you so much for being here. So if you guys would, let's bow our heads and let's pray. Thank God for these little pinpricks in our hearts and the learning that the new ways that we get to see and understand our great King. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all together, this random group of people, but not for a random reason, but for your kingdom. God, I thank you that people like Chuck and myself are willing to hear your call and take the steps forward. I pray that we would be infectious people that would help people lead their lives forward in surrender to you, in service to you, and in service to our fellow man. I pray that we would learn to be generous givers, that we would position ourselves, that we would scheme to grow your kingdom through our time, our talent, and our treasure. We ask all these things in your precious name. Amen.